Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's BU Industry Insiders webinar, How to Leverage Social Media to Develop a Personal Brand and Increase Media Exposure. My name is Jeff Murphy, and I'm an Associate Director in the BU Alumni Relations Office, as well as a proud alumnus of the BU Questrom School of Business. Today's webinar is sponsored by the BU Alumni Association and is offered to our 321,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing alumni with a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. It's important that we get your opinion on how we're doing, so we very much look forward to receiving your feedback via a survey that will be emailed to all of you later today. I know we have alumni joining us from places like Paris, Barcelona, Brazil, India, Toronto, Chicago, California, and as always, dozens of Massachusetts alumni from towns like Waltham, Cambridge, Winchester, Dorchester, Newton, Arlington, and more. For each and every one of you out there, please know that we really do value your opinion on this and every program that we offer. Before I introduce today's speaker, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on the Adobe Connect online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of today's presentation, I'll ask that you please contact Adobe Connect directly. And if you want to jot down this phone number, you can reach them at 1-800-422-3623. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni Association website found at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A chat box you see located at the bottom of your screen. We hope to get to as many questions as we can during today's webinar. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day. Presenting from New York is College of Communications alumna Kristen Ruby. Kris is the founder of Ruby Media Group, also known as RMG, a full-service public relations and social media agency. RMG specializes in creating award-winning integrated public relations and social media campaigns. A boutique and resourceful consulting agency, RMG also works on assembling the right team and recommending the most effective solutions for any business challenge. They also have an unmatched track record of success in creating successful personal branding campaigns. Kris works with top executives to help position their brands in the ever-changing world of social media. She graduated from BU's College of Communications in 2009 with a major in public relations. Kris is one of the America's preeminent experts on social media and is a frequent on-air contributor on Fox News, CNBC, Good Morning America, The Today Show, and more. Kris was recently chosen by the Business Council of Westchester as the youngest 40 under 40 of rising stars in the area. You can learn more about Kris on her two of her websites, both rubymediagroup.com or krisruby.com. Kris, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to have you as our speaker. I'm going to go ahead and get your ebook up, and I say ebook instead of slide deck because for those of you who have attended one of our webinars before, this one's going to be slightly different in that Kris is officially launching her most recent ebook, yet unpublished, called Maximize Your Social Media Presence, and she's going to be walking us through her new ebook, which as you'll see, and as Kris will tell you, there's a lot of content in the images that you're going to see, but you don't need to be worried about writing everything down. We're going to email everybody a copy of this ebook so you can read more in depth a little bit later. But Kris, hopefully you can see that's up, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today for this webinar. I'm so excited to be here and to be part of the alumni community. And so we're going to talk a lot today about personal branding and PR and how you can leverage social media really to build out a personal brand. So, the first thing I just want to talk about is what is a personal brand and why does it matter and why is it so important? And really, the first example that I want to bring up, and I promise not to get political here. This is totally neutral, but just one point here that I think is worth addressing here is that even if you look at the most recent election, right? If you look at someone like the president-elect who won, who has zero political experience at all, came really out of the blue, right, and was able to win a campaign within 2 years. Why is that possible? Well, one of the things that made that possible was a strong personal brand. Whether you love it or hate it, the fact of the matter is that it existed. And so why is that important? It's important because the brand is there. It's like a cape, an invisible cape that you wear, right? And it somehow becomes very important when you need it. But what it is building up a series of branding components, small components over time that one day will create a strong enough brand so that when you need it, you can pull the trigger on it. And that's really at the heart of what personal branding is, because I think there's a lot of confusion and misinformation out there currently about what that is and how you can build one. So really what I want to focus on today is showing you how you can build brand equity by using social media. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. Okay,
So, Kris, I
so
know, oh, sorry to jump in here, but I know one of the things you and I talked about was making sure that we deliver on all the key takeaways that we offered in advertising this webinar. And so the first question I do want to ask you is, can you tell us a little bit about how you would leverage content marketing to increase inbound interest in a brand?
absolutely. I think this is a great question and a great way to open this. Content marketing is so important. So what is content marketing? It's basically putting yourself out there as a thought leader and aligning yourself with the right content that shows your thought leader expertise in a specific area. But that's only half of it, right? So one is writing really good content in a way that people want to digest it. Two is making it really easy to get found by using that content. And I just want to share an example here of what good content marketing looks like. Because people always say, well, Kris, how did you get started? How did you get started in TV? How did you get started building a brand? And so I'll share this story with you. I wrote a really strong piece of content as a guest author for JDate, the site jdate.com at the time. And this was many years back. And the topic was how social media has changed the dating landscape. And then basically I tweeted out that content. I probably retweeted it from JDate's account. And I used the right hashtag so that people who were interested in that in social media could find it. And based on that content and using the right hashtags, a producer found the article and direct messaged me on Twitter and booked me for my very first segment. And again, I had zero experience, right, in television. I hadn't done a hit before, but the reason that I was found by a producer, by a booker, is because I put out the right content and I made it easy for him to find it. And so I share that with you because all of you can really do the same thing, right? So if you're putting out strong content that you feel like could actually be a possible segment, right, and is interesting enough to someone, and you make it easy enough for them to find it, chances are the same thing can happen to you. So there are also some other ways here in terms of content marketing that's important to share about, right? Ways that you can amplify the brand and go above and beyond. One of them is sponsored content. This is a huge trend right now in marketing, and it's very important as some of these sites like Facebook, they change their algorithm with advertising and make it sort of harder for you to be able to get found. Sponsoring content and boosting posts and paying for content, it has become a more important part of the game that didn't actually used to exist. So sponsoring content, for example, you could find a site that you really want to be on for editorial, but you may not actually be able to get in editorial-wise. So what you do is you actually do a sponsored content buy with them, and that helps you get in front of the right audience with really strong content. The next here, obviously, is SEO, right? So SEO is important, right? But I believe in one type of SEO, which is organic SEO, which means you need to, through putting out good content, I don't believe you have to pay for all of it with, pay-per-click or all these other things you could be doing with SEO. If you put out strong organic content and have the right links, which hold the right weight and depth, then you can make it easier to get found. The next thing here, which is so easy to do, which is the #1 mistake that people make, is that they don't blog. You don't have to pay anyone to do this. You can do it yourself. Again, put out really strong content, figure out who you are. If I was booked on a topic, what would I say? Think about your name, your title, comma, expert in X, right? So if you look, for example, Kris Ruby, president of Ruby Media Group, that's irrelevant. What matters to someone booking who's looking, for personal brands is what is this person an expert in? Expert in social media, technology, digital media trends, right? So you have to be able to think like a booker, to think like a producer, to think like someone who wants to find you, and then sort of do the reverse algorithm of that and work backwards. That's the number one thing that I can share with you guys today. The other thing here is obviously the rise in inbound marketing, right? So this notion that people are just going to automatically be looking for you and waiting for your content, and that you can just bombard them with direct mailers and flyers and direct advertising, right? That's the way of the past. That's not how things are working anymore. If you really want to develop a strong funnel of inbound marketing, you need to create compelling content that keeps people coming back for more. And if you think about it, right, like let's say that you're searching for someone who does exactly what you do. When you go through Google, the first page of Google, who do you click on? Are you clicking on the the paid for ads, which you can very easily see because they're marked as that, or are you clicking on the content that answers your question that you have about the person, right? So again, let's say you want to be an expert in insurance and develop a personal brand about that. I always tell people, what are the top 20 questions that your prospects or current clients are asking you? And then write content around that as part of your strategy. That's really the number one thing you can do. And right there, you have 20 different blog posts, right? Write out questions and help people find you. So I'm going to quickly skim through, what are these top 5 questions that people really have when they get started. And again, you're going to have access to all of this. I'm going to make sure you guys all receive a copy of this ebook after the presentation. So number 1, right, is social media sufficient to replace your entire Marcom strategy? No, it's definitely not. And that's a big mistake when people hire, an agency. They think that social media is the magic bullet to fix all of their problems. Social media can't fix it. The other thing is that an agency or anyone that's going to help you with this isn't you. The only way that you can shine in this space is by being you, right? Be you. That was be you. But I remember we used to say that at BU.com. But that's really important. You need to be part of the process, right? No one can go inside of your brain and know what you know as a thought leader in your field. So if you're expecting someone to be able to just ghost on your behalf and know that, you're mistaken. It's not going to happen. You have to be part of the process. And again, social media is only one part of it, right? You have public relations as another part of it. You have core brand building as another. You may or may not have, media relations, paid media, all of these other things, and then a traditional advertising component of it. So you can't expect only social media, to turn everything around for you. You need to be doing, one of 7 different things. Social media is different than traditional marketing in that it's not direct advertising, as I'm sure all of you, get that, right? So if you think you can just go out there and sort of say, here's why you need to work with me, or here's why I'm the best, obviously, that's not going to work. You need to build a personal brand so that you're answering people's questions, so that if there's a breaking news story, right, you are the one that the media is going to as a source, because you've already put out so much content on that topic that they know that they can come to you and rely on you because your thought leadership in a specific area is so unique. Number 3 here, what should I expect? If you do invest anything in this, what should you expect and how quickly, should you expect it? Again, it's a slow drip. It's over a long period of time. I think that you should expect to be putting a lot in on the front end of writing content, of formatting that content, of doing graphics around that content. And by the way, I just want to share some tips with you and some tricks that you can use that are free or at a very minimal cost to do that. Some of the things that we use, there's great apps, like if you're not a designer. One of the apps that I use if I want to put out content and then format it for social media would be like something like canva.com, which makes it really easy for anyone to do. There's other things like, Camera Plus, where you can actually edit your photos and filter them in the right way, and then obviously use the right hashtags. And if you want a full list of those apps and everything else, I can definitely provide that to you. What comes first, planning or publishing? Obviously, without a doubt, planning. It's the number 1 thing that you need to do. You need to have an editorial calendar, a content calendar. You need to know it. And one of the things that you should do is sort of also look at a calendar of, what are the holidays that come up? And believe it or not, there's so many random holidays that most people don't even realize. That's a really good PR trick to just leverage off of that. And that can make your whole social media process that much quicker. But again, the main thing that I want to really urge you to do, if you're attending this webinar, if you want to build a brand and if you want to get found by the media, the number one thing I urge you to do is to start staying on top of the news way more than you ever have before, right? Because in the TV booking world, I mean, literally that's how they're booking. So anything that you're planning probably is not going to be relevant if there's a breaking news story. They want someone that's able to speak on that specific topic. So again, if you are, if you're in insurance and something just came out in insurance, you want to write your content around that and then use the right keywords and the right hashtags, so that you can get found to hopefully speak on it. And speaking on it is only, one part of it, by the way. The other thing is that's really important is guest blogging and guest posting and, on other people's sites as well. That's really important to be able to do.
Kris, sorry to jump in again, but before we move on, you had mentioned a website that people can use to edit images. Could you repeat the name of that one more time?
Sure, it's canva.com
How do you
with a
spell?
C.
How do you Canva?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. So at this point, I know you touched on this a little bit, but can you comment again, the three big questions that we wanted to answer for our audience today, both from sort of a small business and also a personal branding side. Can you tell us a little bit more about how to be positioned as a source so that the media calls on you for quotes?
Absolutely. This is a great question. So the number one thing here, right, and these are great questions to guide you in this journey. If you want to be positioned as a source, the first thing, right, is who is your target audience? Who do you want access to? And then sort of backtracking around that. What media are you, looking to connect with? And then creating a media list around that as well. Um, Again, who are you? If a booker sees you, who are you, right? You're not just president of X company. You are an expert in X. You have very specific thought leadership in that area. And I think that's the biggest mistake that people make is that they think that it's just going to be they think that a booker is going to be interested in them just because of what they're doing in their company. And I'll be honest with you, the truth is really no one cares. Unless you're hiring an agency to specifically get you a few hits on what your company is doing that's the newest, shiniest thing, most of the time it's not a sustainable PR campaign. I'll be honest with you, out of over probably 25 or 30 TV hits, I don't think I've never done one hit on what my company does, right? Because the media doesn't care what they do. Here's what they care about. They care about getting more viewers and eyeballs. They care about, having the best guests. They care about having someone with thought leadership that can move a story forward. So that's important to say as well, right? You need to be able to have a point of view that pushes a story forward. It's not just saying, I read this and regurgitating what the story is. It's saying, based on this story, here are the top three things that you need to do, right? I did something yesterday on this. So I looked at a story of, again, just terrible post-election social media behavior that I've noticed. And then I put out a post basically saying, the top three ways not to engage in deplorable social media behavior, right? So the option, I didn't just read the story, I read it and then I turned it around and I took it and I put out actually really good content that people can use and consume, that they're like, hey, Kris, thanks for sharing this, right? So that's a perfect example of something that you guys can do as well. And if the content's strong enough, you can reuse that content for a pitch to a booker, for content on a blog, or even break it down into different tweets. So that's something that's important as well, right? You can take this content and really stretch it out exponentially, especially if you're putting in the time to do it. I know I'm talking a little bit about TV booking, and some people here may not care about that at all, but here's the reason why I bring that up, because this is about social media and PR, right? Leveraging the personal brand to do both. And I think that if you do one, you use it to get to the other, right? So I want to empower you with the tools that if you're going to use social media the right way, one of the byproducts of that is that you can then obtain the attention of media by doing that. So that's why I'm sort of sharing both sides of the equation of what that looks like and giving you examples of how you can do that as well. Okay, let's go to the next one. I know we touched a little bit, on blogging for business. So blogging for the business of you, right? Of who you really are and why that matters. I can't stress this enough. You need a blog. And I can't tell you enough that if you spend time writing these pitches and no one picks them up, drop them on your blog. That's why they're so great to have them, because you can keep recycling and reusing the content. You also really want to know your audience. You don't just want to write for the sake of writing. If you, again, understand what your personal brand is and who you're looking for, you should write the content very specifically for them. Sharing helpful information, again, is really important. It shouldn't feel salesy. It should honestly feel like you're compelled to write something because your thought leadership on the topic will be that helpful for people. And it's like, here's a number one rule for you. If you don't even want to share it, if your own family doesn't want to share what you're writing, then I wouldn't write it, right? Like, you need to write things that's actually interesting enough that would apply to someone that will actually help their life. And you may say, but I work in a field that's so dry, no one's ever going to want to share this. And I'm going to say that that's just not true. I've seen it done so many times where you can spice up content. You can even, and if you're not sure how to get started, I mean, you can Google, there's blog topic generator ideas where you can put in 3 different keywords and they'll literally give you the titles of what you should write. So, I mean, we can really simplify this and make it not so challenging. Creating, again, an effective content calendar, I can't stress that enough. But you also want to understand, right, like, what are your frequency limits? How much content can you legitimately put out? One of the things that I urge people to do is to use sites such as Mention or such as Google Alerts and put out alerts for, trending news stories in your field, so that you just have it coming to you, right? So, for example, like, every time there was a news story on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, it's just impossible to keep up with all of that. So what I did is I went in and I put on Google Alerts for each of those, for those keywords. And now, I'm getting a daily digest email of the top stories, the top breaking stories for each of those things. And then I can decide, do I want to comment on it? I did the same thing with, election social media as a phrase. And then I would get those things to me and decide if I wanted to comment on any of them. You can literally do the same thing for yourself and make it super easy. The other thing from a personal branding perspective, as I'm sure most of you know about, is to leverage Harrow, helpareporterout.com, which was started by Peter Shankman, who I also believe was a BU Com alum as well. Is that correct, Jeffrey? Or do you know?
Yeah, Peter Schenkman is a BU alumnus.
Yeah, so he created that. And so that's a free resource for you guys to use, and you can sign up. And, as a PR consultant, I use it every single day for my clients. So you can use that without having to hire an agency. And if you want to be quoted as a source, you should be reading those queries every day and respond to the ones that make sense for you so you can help establish your personal brand by that. And again, you're not having to pay for any of that. That's free press if you get it. Now, let me give you some tips on that are really important. People, again, spend more time pitching themselves when they respond to them and writing their life story in an email than they do actually giving what a reporter is asking for. So if a reporter is asking you, I'm looking for an expert who can speak on X, here's what I want to talk about. You copy and paste that and then write back, literally, they're looking for XYZ. Respond to each of those things and then give them one line at the bottom of the pitch with who you are and a link back to your site and why they should book you. Literally, that's what you do. And you have to understand, these people are getting thousands of responses a day. So what they're looking for is the best response. They're not looking for who the best person is. That's secondary to them. The first thing that they want to see is who is answering the question. And 99% of people do not ever answer the question. And that's why no one picks up their responses to Harrow queries. So that's a really great tip that I'm just going to leave you with. That's really, that alone can really help boost your personal brand. And it's a free way to do it.
Kris, what is that again? Harrow? H-A-R-O? Sorry, I couldn't quite make that out.
Harrow. Harrow. Help a reporter out.
Oh, got it. Okay, thanks. So as we continue through this tour of your ebook here, I know one of the questions that you and I had talked about beforehand that we definitely wanted to dive in a little deeper was about, you're talking about how important it is to basically make connections with members of the media. So can you speak a little bit more specifically about how to do that via Twitter?
Definitely. So my number one secret tip for Twitter that I'm going to share with you guys is if you want to connect with the media, one of the things that you can do is build a Twitter list that is private, that no one else sees except for you. And what I want you to do is connect members of the media that you're looking to connect with, put them all on Twitter in a list, and then follow along with what they're saying, right? So follow their tweets rather than seeing in your normal feed the 2,000 people that you normally follow. You're now going to see in that Twitter list maybe only the 15 media people that you want to get on their radar, right? And so every day for 15 minutes a day, you're going to go in there and you are going to favorite their tweets. You're going to make an active effort to respond to some of what they're saying. You're going to retweet some of their stuff. The reason you're going to do this is because you're going to warm up the process so that if you ever do want to reach out to them or if you do want to get on their radar, they know who you are. So that is a really great tip that can exponentially help you, and it's an easy actionable item. And so again, the way that you do that is that, again, you create the traditional media list. So what that means is I wish that X publication would write about me, right? So then you open that publication, you look at an article that's written about your competitor, you see who wrote it, you Google them, you look at their website, and then on the bottom, they're going to be sharing all of their social media links. Here's what's important to writers and editors, right? What's important is eyeballs on what they're writing. If you can help them move that along, you then become more valuable to them, not only as a source, but also as a fan and part of the audience, right? So if you want to move that forward, you definitely should be creating this Twitter list and following what they're doing. The other thing that I'm going to share with you is that if they do include you, if anyone does write about you, definitely thank them on Twitter or Facebook and retweet the content, share the content, and tag them in it so that they see it. I will say this from my experiences with the media and being friends with a lot of them, they notice if you don't do that. And if you don't do that, they're less likely to use you again as a quote or as a source moving forward. Again, tap into trends and also look at what's trending. And then you want to get found, right? So put out content and leverage the trends that are actually trending right now on Twitter. Let's see what else here. The other thing is look for journalist queries in real time, right? So one of the things is like hashtag journal request, hashtag PR request, and then just jump in there.
So Kris, are your tips the same? We're here in the Facebook section, but I'm curious to know if it's what's similar and what's different about using Facebook to also make those connections with the media.
So my number one tip for Facebook that's different is leveraging Facebook groups, because you never know what media is in a lot of these groups, and they actually, search the groups for sources within them. So what I mean by that is that if again, like you are in a very specific vertical, I would search for groups that exist within that, join the groups, and then comment, right, within those groups. Because a lot of times people get queries just from that alone, from media finding them within the groups. The other thing is actually, obviously, you can use hashtags now in Facebook, and I think that's important. I mean, you don't want to overdo it the way you overdo it on like an Instagram or a Twitter with hashtags, because Facebook, etiquette is just different. But if you want people to find you, you should tag pages, you should mention places, and you should use hashtags. Obviously, there's a whole other component here, right? So if you want to build a personal brand for business to get more sales, and we're not talking about the media side for a second, you really have to be boosting posts, right? They've changed their algorithms so much that if you want to get found and if you want all of your fans seeing your content, you need to do that. And that brings up a whole other part of this whole strategy, which is for a personal brand, you have a profile account, but then you can also create a fan page of your name, right? So that's something I always suggest people do. Create a separate fan page so that, again, you're differentiating yourself as the brand, which is important. You want to stay consistent here. Don't just comment on every story. Don't comment on things that are out of your wheelhouse or out of scope just to say that you commented on it, because it's very obvious. I always say it's better to go super narrow than to go way too wide when you don't really know what it is that you're commenting on. And then, again, we're making all this available to you. So, included here, you'll have, my thoughts on a 5-step process for social media ROI, what you can be doing here. And then I'm offering everyone today, if you want to further the conversation with me, because I'm sure there's lots of questions, or how you can develop a personal brand. Like, I'm happy to do a 15-minute consultation with any member of the community that was on, this call today. But what is most important to me to do right now is to really sort of open it up for Q&A, because this is really about you guys, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and so I want to make myself available for the second half of this presentation today to really answer what those questions are, and how I can be of service in that way to you.
Awesome, Kris, thanks. As we wait for some questions to come in here, again, to all of our guests, please feel free to use this chance to ask Kris a question by typing your question into the Q&A chat box at the bottom of the screen. And while we wait for those to roll in, Kris, I know you and I had talked about, just as an interesting exercise with our group here, we want to know from all of you, in terms of building your own personal brand, particularly if any of you are already experienced in trying to connect with the media. Please click the right answer here for which social media channel has been most successful for you. And Kris, I trust you can see those answers coming in real time here.
Definitely. Yeah, this is really interesting. Yeah, guys, keep answering these if you can. So, because this is fascinating to see. So I'm seeing what looks like a lot of Twitter, right? Yeah, well, because Twitter is #1 with journalists, right? But it just is. Facebook, Instagram trailing behind. We didn't even touch on Instagram. Um, Tumblr, yeah, Tumblr. I usually don't do that much. None of the above. None of the. If you guys could, for the 8 of you that said none of the above, can you just drop into the chat box right now what the other category would be for you? Because you said none of the above, so I want to know what are the other things that you're doing that have worked for you here. So just drop that into the chat button so we can see what those things are, so we can share it with the rest of the group.
Actually, Kris, I just opened up another poll question that's a short answer one, so people can also use that. But I can see them coming in here at the bottom: LinkedIn. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, we sort of forgot to include LinkedIn, but we don't necessarily. I don't always think of that as social media, to be honest with you. I think of it more as your professional brand. But any comments on LinkedIn?
Yeah, this is great. So yeah, one of the things that we didn't talk about was LinkedIn Post, which is really great, right, for all of your business connections. It's like the most business social media network out of all of them, and it is really important for personal branding. So we should talk about that. One of the things you can do on LinkedIn is to really share over all of the content. Again, the thought leadership content that you're writing, and to put it on LinkedIn. Some other things that you can do, some tips for personal branding on LinkedIn. Obviously, securing recommendations and testimonials from people in your colleague is important. Joining relevant industry groups and participating in those groups is really important. LinkedIn has added the capabilities and functionality to add videos or photos within your profile. I think that's important as well. It makes it a lot more interactive for people. If you're quoted in an article, you should share that on LinkedIn so that other people can see that. There's other basic things, right? So, people having work anniversaries, like, saying congratulations. It's just another way to move the brand forward so people actually see you and consistently see you. But the #1 way to leverage LinkedIn for personal branding is really to be putting out a steady flow of content. And then obviously using the right tags accordingly within that so that people can find it when they're looking for it.
Kris, we've got some great questions rolling in here, and so we'll dive in. Molly's wondering, is an e-newsletter a suitable substitute for a blog? Are they the same thing? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they're the same thing. I wouldn't necessarily do it as a substitute. It depends. My answer is that it depends who's on the receiving end of it. So, if you have all of the people that are on your target list that are receiving that, then I suppose you could say that. But my issue with an e-newsletter is that people don't necessarily just find it, right? Because they're getting it because they've already somehow subscribed to you, I think. So if I'm interested in what you're doing, but or if I don't know that you exist, I'd be Googling you to first find out about it. If you're not putting that information on a blog, it's going to be much more challenging for me to find that. I feel like the issue with that newsletter is that it goes under the basic assumption that I already know who you are versus someone, and I want to read your content again versus the inbound approach of drawing people in with the content. So I would say to cover your bases is probably best to just drop that content on a blog as well, especially if you already have it.
And a similar question from Diane. She's already a brand on an electronic newspaper, but wants to change venues for broader exposure. So if you're somebody who's got, a solid brand presence in an e-newsletter, what would you recommend as sort of the next step for broader exposure?
So the question here is that she wants to go to a different outlet.
Exactly.
I mean, then that just becomes a negotiation with the outlet, and again, really, that I would say that that's the pitch, right? So I would spend time, like as a PR person, perfecting what that pitch is and telling them, what you can bring over to their outlet and why they should be working with you. Again, they're going to be looking for your audience size, your social media numbers, what type of talent you are, that you're bringing to their site, right? Because again, if you're a brand, they look at you as talent right now, right? That's the new version of quote unquote Hollywood talent and influencers. So they're going to want to see your own version of a media kit. So my recommendation to you would be to really put that together and let them know based on what you've done with your previous outlet, what sort of results you were able to have and how much traffic you were able to bring.
Interesting question here from Susan. Specifically on Twitter, is it better to have many more followers than accounts that you yourself follow?
To have, I think people do that. For vanity reasons, right? So the Twitter vanity thing. Yes, it's better to have more followers than people that you're following. I think that matters probably maybe to a journalist if they're seeing it. I think in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't necessarily. But if you want to sort of show that, I would say yes. To answer that, it would be yes.
Um, Mary's asked an interesting question as well. Can you recommend a good app or a site? You talked quite a bit about starting and the importance of blogging. So where would you recommend that people get started with blogging?
I always just recommend, like, I build out these sites using WordPress, and I customize the themes, and then they usually have a blogging component within them. So that's what I recommend doing, just having it built into the back end of a WordPress site. But if you want to get started with it, like even with writing, one tool that I use that I actually pay for this tool, but it's a great tool. It's called Grammarly, Grammarly. And what you can do is you drop in all of your text that you've written, and it will like edit it. It's like having a professional editor on your computer. And you can actually then put in like this is a business letter or a business email, or this is going to be for a blog post, and it edits the content accordingly for where you're going to publish it. So I think having tools like that at your disposal is also just amazing, and it cuts out having to have like a full-time editor with you. One thing I will say is that you need to think about yourself as like your own magazine now, right? Everyone's become a publisher. And that's something that's really, really changed. So you kind of need to think that way. Think the way like the biggest regional publication thinks where you live.
So you've been talking about this next question from Patrick, and you just talked about, sort of viewing yourself as a magazine. Patrick's question is, when your business is you, is there a different way that you're branding than you would for a company? So should he really be talking more about who he is or what he does? Does that make sense?
So again, it's not. It definitely makes sense. It's not who you are or what you do. It's what you can do for others that I think is really most important, right? So I think about like to again, if you take my brand and insert it into that equation. So who I am, right? So Kris Ruby, what I do, social media PR. Again, that's just a title. What's most important is how can I take that and move a story forward and give people information that will broaden their horizons on a specific topic, right? So it's not who I am or what I do, it's what I can do for their audience that matters. I think when you're branding a person versus a company, it's absolutely different, right? And you can take more liberties when you're doing personal branding than you can if you're working a Fortune 500 company and you just have a different, structural sort of a hierarchy that you have to go through, where the great part about having a personal brand is that you don't have all of that. I will say though that there are ways that you can very easily destroy your personal brand. I've never seen more people destroy their personal brands than I have over the past few weeks of the election. I'll be honest with you. And, one of the things that I'd always tell people, traditionally before any of this happened is you have to think about who you're connected to. Are you connected to people online that you want to potentially do business with? If so, you don't want to put something out there that is going to potentially offend 50% of the population that, you are probably going to want to work with at some point down the line. But for whatever reason right now, we're in the wild, wild west of social media. So all conventional social media etiquette rules have gone right out the window and people are just posting whatever they feel like. Even on LinkedIn, I'm seeing it across the board. I've never seen anything like this. So I do urge you to think about that when you're putting content out there, right? Think about that you're in this for the long haul. Don't just think about what makes the most sense to post today because you have a strong opinion about something. You really want to think about, if this was on the cover of the New York Times, my tweet, my post, my blog post, would I want all of America, would I want the world reading this opinion? And you have to think again, how does this really tie in to your overall brand? Does it support it, or is it really left field? That's really, something that I think is something that you should think about.
So Mark's question, or Silas's question, totally addresses what you just talked about sort of somebody destroying their own personal brand. But Silas wants to know about when you've got fans or commenters who are impacting your brand. He specifically mentions that on Twitter and Facebook, he's getting lots of people who make comments that you don't want to be associated with, that he's having to block people from time to time. And so his question is basically, how do you make sure that you are interacting with the right set of people on these social media channels?
That's a great question. And again, I'm seeing a rise of that right now. And so one of the things that you can do, let's say it's on Facebook and you post something and someone posts something that's really, inappropriate in response on that thread or that you deem inappropriate. One of the things that you can do is direct message them back and in a sort of polite way and say, this is like a safe space for positive, commentary. Like we don't really tolerate, like, so you can have your own sort of social media policy with your own followers, right? Of what's okay and what's not okay. If you start seeing things that are really sort of terrible and that you don't want to be associated with, I would unfriend those people and block them. But unfortunately, right now, everyone's coming out of the woodwork and saying so much more of this stuff than we've ever seen. So you can't block literally everyone you're friends with, right? So there's got to be a different way to do it. So one of the things that I think is that if you sort of post intelligent things in what is somewhat of a neutral way, I think that the message, the way in which you craft that message, also will dictate the response that you're getting. If you still see things that are just ridiculous, I wouldn't, sometimes I'd say definitely remove that content because, again, you are affiliated with what their response is. Or you can publicly respond and say, you know what, this is not, like, please don't comment. Please stop trolling my wall. Like, please stop. Or on Twitter, again, you don't have to respond to those people at all.
So Susan's just typed in a question as I think a result of listening to your answers on the last two, but let's say that you do have a personal brand meltdown on social media. What advice, and I think this probably could be a topic for an entirely other webinar session, but any thoughts on how you recover from a major brand disaster?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to go silent for a little bit. That I would definitely say. I mean, I just read an article actually about Kim. I know not everyone's seen her, but Kim Kardashian, I think she's gone silent on social media for somewhat like 43 days right now after her whole social media robbery heist, right? And so she's like not even using it right now. So they were saying how much money that's costing her, right, by not doing it. But it's okay to sort of have some time for inner reflection. This world that we've created where we have to be attached to our devices 24/7 in order to feel okay and connected is at, that's not okay, right? Like if you have a brand meltdown, I would say step away from the computer. Like stop posting. All you're going to do is make it worse. You need some time to reflect on what happened with that meltdown. And if you stay connected, all you're going to do is continue to make that problem, exponentially greater. So I would say to walk away from the computer, shut it down, and go take a walk outside. Literally, go sit in nature for a second and think about when you come back, when you decide to have your comeback online, what is it that you want to say? Do you want to issue a public apology? How do you want to sort of PR this? Do you feel like you can recover from this? What does that really look like for you? And again, it's so specific to each individual thing that I feel like I'd probably have to have like a call with everyone on what those meltdowns look like. But my number one piece of advice would be step away from the computer and stop posting.
So I knew we would get a question like this before too long, and I'm glad Catriel has asked it. I think it's actually a great place to end. Um, and so Catriel's question, and I'll add, other than hiring you as a consultant, Kris, what would be your best advice for giving a new haute couture fashion brand some exposure on social media?
Some well, I mean, again, some exposure on social media. I think that well, for a fashion brand, I would say Instagram would probably make the most sense for that brand. And to also be joining different fashion groups and fashion week things of that nature and boosting posts, right? Figuring out who your audience is and boosting posts accordingly to get on the radar of who you're looking for. I think, also obviously like fashion is an entirely separate PR beast where you just really need to be sending out samples and connecting with the right influencers. So my number one piece of advice is figure out what influencers you want to connect with and then dress them. And then broker a deal with them where they, in exchange for you dressing them, they are, um, you know, publicly promoting your stuff. Obviously, they have to follow the new guidelines and make it clear, right? They have to let it be known that you have an agreement with them. But that's what you should be doing for some quick and easy exposure. That's really more of a barter than actually paying out of pocket.
Kris, let's talk about your brand. Where should people follow you on social media for continued thoughts on how to do this?
Sure. So my site is chrisruby.com or rubymediagroup.com. If you want to connect with me on social media, you can find me at Sparkling Ruby or at Ruby Media Group. And I'd so love your feedback, even, some tweets from today on Twitter. If you have questions, definitely tweet them to me after this on Twitter, again, at Sparkling Ruby. And I'm happy to answer, any questions or anything you guys may have that weren't addressed in here.
Awesome, Kris. Thank you so much for your time. As you were doing your presentation, I was sort of feeling like a lot of the tips that you were offering are, it felt like a little bit like, a peek behind the veil at how the sausage of media is made. But everything that you talked about, I mean, is common sense and something that everybody can do. So I really appreciate that you delivered on your promise of here are some steps that everybody who's, tuning in today can take to help build their personal brand and increase their media exposure. So thank you again on behalf of the BU Alumni Office for sharing this with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. And I appreciate, all of you that tuned in for this. And thank you as well, Jeff, for asking me to do this.
Absolutely. And I want to thank our guests for participating today. I specifically want to thank those of you who've donated to BU in the past. We literally wouldn't put on programs like this without your support. We have an incredible lineup of webinars coming up in the next few months, and our next session is actually this Thursday. We still have a few spots remaining for a really great topic. Our title of the webinar is How to Flip Resistant Colleagues into Rabid Supporters. 5 keys to influence in the workplace. You can sign up for that webinar now and see our schedule of upcoming webinars on our website at bu.edu/alumni. And as always, if you or any BU alumni you know would be interested in presenting a professional development webinar or have a topic that you'd like to showcase for our office, feel free to contact me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you everybody for your time. Have a great day or a great evening wherever you might be.